The story opens with a chaotic scene where a man is going on a rampage, even going so far as to bite into a motorbike. People flee in fear until the number one hero, All Might, appears and stops the man with a single punch. The crowd cheers, and we meet a young man named Koichi, who is awestruck by the hero's power. In this world, 80% of people are born with special abilities called quirks, which initially caused global disorder. To restore peace, heroes, recognized by the government. However, there are also vigilantes who act outside the law. Koichi is a university student with a minor quirk called Slide and Glide, allowing him to slide across surfaces if he maintains 3 points of contact. Though his power is harmless and slow, comparable to biking, it often makes him look silly to others. Running late for class, Koichi encounters a group of thugs. Their leader accuses him of spilling his drink. Koichi bows and apologizes, trying to avoid trouble, but they still ridicule him. Just as one of them tries to kick him, Koichi instinctively uses his quirk to slide away and escape. Later, a girl named Popstep is seen performing in public, dancing and singing. Koichi watches and realizes her charm comes from her energy and enthusiasm, not her music. As he rushes off again, he crashes into a puddle while sliding. He then works his shift at a convenience store, where the same thugs from earlier show up to harass him again. Frustrated with how the police failed to protect him, Koichi decides to become a vigilante. He starts doing small good deeds around the city, picking up trash, helping people, and earns the nickname Nice Guy. One day, he meets Popstep in an alleyway. She recognizes him as the cockroach guy because of his crawling hoodie, and they have a playful but tense exchange. Just then, the thugs return and begin harassing Popstep, threatening to expose her real identity online. Koichi initially hesitates to act, but when Pop cries for help, he jumps in to protect her, even though he's not a skilled fighter. His surprise attack fails, and the thugs beat him again. Just as things get worse, a mysterious man appears and takes down the leader with a punch. He introduces himself as Knuckle Duster, a vigilante who fights crime despite lacking a quirk. Knuckle Duster checks the thug's tongue, looking for signs of a black tongue, a symptom of a drug called Trigger. Though he finds nothing, he takes out the rest of the thugs easily. He offers to mentor Koichi, recognizing his desire to be like All Might. Koichi declines, thinking Knuckle Duster is crazy, but he's intrigued. Later, the thugs seek revenge and are approached by a man who gives them a drug. After taking it, their bodies mutate and they go berserk. Meanwhile, Knuckle Duster explains to Koichi that Trigger amplifies a person's quirk while dulling their reasoning, turning users into violent villains. He wants to stop the drug before it spreads out of control. Koichi is skeptical, suggesting that heroes or police should handle it, but Knuckle Duster insists that immediate action is necessary. They start patrolling for suspicious individuals, checking for black tongues as a way to identify Trigger users. Popstep joins them and suggests using social media to track likely suspects, which Koichi agrees is smarter than Knuckle Duster's brute force methods. As Knuckle Duster interrogates a suspicious man, a pro-hero named Eraserhead arrives, mistaking him for one of the criminals. Koichi and Popstep panic, thinking they're being arrested. Knuckle Duster attacks Eraserhead, who erases his supposed quirk and kicks him. But to Eraserhead's surprise, Knuckle Duster keeps fighting, because he doesn't have a quirk at all, just pure physical training and toughness. The real suspect escapes during the scuffle, and Popstep recognizes him from past photos involving Trigger cases. She gives chase. Meanwhile, Koichi is confronted once again by the same thugs, who are now transformed by the drug and have come looking for revenge. Eraserhead stops fighting and Knuckle Duster mocks him, asking if he's tired. But Eraserhead apologizes, realizing that since Knuckle Duster has no quirk, he's technically not a villain, and there's no legal reason to arrest him. Still, he finds him suspicious and plans to report him to the police. Suddenly, they hear chaos nearby. The thugs are chasing after Koichi, and their leader has turned into a spiked ball. Koichi dodges but finds himself surrounded, until Knuckle Duster steps in to save him. Knuckle Duster asks about Pop, and Koichi explains she went after the suspicious man, so they rush off to find her. The leader gets back up, but Eraserhead restrains him, confirming he's under the effects of a quirk-enhancing drug. Meanwhile, Pop catches up to the suspicious man, but one of the thugs attacks her, sending her crashing into him. The man drops his toys, takes one, and injects himself with a drug, Trigger, causing a monstrous transformation. As people panic, the monster grabs Pop and the thug like they're toys. Knuckle Duster lands a kick to the giant's face, making him drop Pop. She begins to fall, and Queechy rushes to save her. He reflects on his desire to be a hero, even without a strong quirk or a license, and manages to grab Pop mid-air. He tells her to jump, and as he falls, he makes contact with the giant's hand and uses it to activate his sliding quirk, landing in a pile of trash. Just as the monster tries to crush him, Eraserhead uses his quirk to neutralize the villain's powers and captures him. As the police arrive, Knuckle Duster quietly slips away, and Eraserhead thanks him, calling him a well-meaning civilian. However, he warns that vigilantes can be dangerous. Knuckle Duster argues that heroes like him can act where pro-heroes are limited, stopping threats before they escalate. Eraserhead pushes back, saying it's illegal to attack people before they commit a crime. Knuckle Duster shrugs it off, saying he hasn't broken any laws. Later, Pop checks on Queechy, who admits he's exhausted from pretending to be a hero. She calls him out for being wishy-washy and says she just wanted to thank him. Knuckle Duster jokes about Queechy copying his style by falling in the trash, but reminds him there's still much to learn. Though Queechy insists he doesn't want to be his student, Knuckle Duster knows he's lying, especially since Queechy accidentally called him Master. Pop spots two middle schoolers using quirks to fight and reports it, prompting Queechy to rush over. Thanks to gear Knuckle Duster gave him, he can slide faster without getting hurt. But when he arrives, he crashes into trash again. He tries to introduce himself as the Crawler, a new name Knuckle Duster suggested, but the kids still call him Nice Guy. As he tries to teach them his new name, one blasts him with laser vision, and they start beating him up. Knuckle Duster shows up, ready to retaliate, but Queechy stops him, saying it's not right to hit kids. The kids mock them both, but then Pop arrives. They recognize her immediately, and she gives them autographs. She convinces them to back off, saying they're not bad kids. But just then, an invincible villain crashes through a wall, sending a baby flying. Queechy saves the baby using his quirk, while Knuckle Duster punches the villain. The villain boasts that no one can hurt him and reveals a black tongue, confirming he used Trigger. Knuckle Duster and Queechy team up to fight him. Though Queechy is kicked aside, Knuckle Duster uses the fact that the villain hasn't mastered his new powers to land a brutal series of attacks. Eventually, the villain reverts to normal. Knuckle Duster asks Queechy to take a picture of him, but his face is too bloodied to be recognizable. The baby's mom thanks them, and the group secures the villain. Pop tells the kids that Trigger turns the user's tongue black and warns them to be careful. Then, as the police sirens close in, she leaps away, inviting them to her next performance. The kids ask Queechy who they are, and he tells them they're new heroes before quickly leaving the scene. A detective investigates the incident. A cop suggests using the quirk registry to identify the villain, but the detective says it's pointless. Trigger gave him powers not in the database. He realizes the man was defeated by a vigilante and suspects the vigilante could be punished for excessive force. The officer doesn't care since the villain was stopped, but the detective insists the vigilante is still a criminal for working outside the law. Later, Pop is at Queechy's place, telling him everyone's talking about the incident. He asks what people are saying about the new heroes, and she tells him they're calling him the Squalor, much to his dismay. At university, Queechy reflects on his dreams of being a hero. Even as a vigilante, he doesn't get paid, so he needs to keep his part-time job. On his way home, he uses his quirk to slide up a wall and find someone lounging in his apartment. At first, he thinks it's a thief, but it's Knuckle Duster, who broke in through the window. Then the doorbell rings and a girl bursts in. It's Pop, without her usual makeup. Queechy realizes she's been hiding her identity. She prepares for a show while Knuckle Duster gets comfortable, claiming his shift ended early. Queechy is annoyed that both have invaded his place, but heads off to work. At the convenience store, he reflects on how far his life is from the student dream he had. He has no friends at college, and his boss yells at him to pay attention. Meanwhile, Pop performs at her concert, where the middle schoolers show up to cheer her on. One fan, Taro, tries to get closer, but another fan punches him aside. Namimaru, one of the middle schoolers, tells Taro not to cut in line. Ichino, the other, comments that Pop is cute, so he understands the excitement, but reminds everyone not to act selfishly, or they might make her cry. He dramatically declares he'll turn his passion into a love explosion and creates a light show with his quirk. Pop thanks him for his support, but Namimaru accuses him of trying to hog attention. Taro tells them to shut up. His tongue turns black, and he injects Trigger into himself, transforming into a giant eel-like creature. He starts sliming people, terrifying Pop. As Koichi finishes his shift, he sees Taro chasing Pop through the streets. He asks the middle schoolers what's going on, but they just call him the Squalor. When they spot Knuckle Duster, they panic. Knowing Taro will be hard to stop, Knuckle Duster devises a pincer attack plan. While Taro chases Pop, Koichi grabs onto him. Knuckle Duster tries to land a punch, but the slime makes him slip, and both he and Koichi fall. They regroup and spot a restaurant, hatching a new plan. Pop hides in an alley, luring Taro in by pretending she's ready to shake his hand. Koichi figured it might calm him, but Taro wraps himself around her and leans in to kiss her. Koichi dumps flour on them, drying up the slime, making it easier for Knuckle Duster to knock Taro out. When the police approach, the group quickly escapes. Later, after Pop's bath, she nags Koichi about his shampoo and scolds Knuckle Duster for walking around half naked. He argues it's not her space. Koichi hangs up the laundry, reflecting that while his life isn't what he imagined as a student, it's not all bad. At Police HQ, Detective Tsukauchi notes that most instant villains have been appearing in the Naruhata district and are using Trigger. Detective Tanuma asks if they can trace it back to a source, but Tsukauchi says the users don't know who gave it to them. Tanuma is surprised the drug is being given away, suspecting the goal is to create chaos. Back with Koichi, Pop tells him the middle schoolers are now friends with Taro. Koichi realizes Taro must have been released, and Pop confirms he wasn't trying to hurt anyone. He was tricked into using Trigger. Taro even agreed to reveal who gave it to him. Koichi wants to tell Knuckle Duster, but Pop stops him, afraid he'll beat Taro up. On the way to meet Taro and the boys, Pop complains about her shoes not being made for running. Koichi offers his arm to help, but she worries about appearances. He jokes that she's not even a real celebrity. Suddenly, a girl named Kazuho, Keen, shows up and recognizes Pop, asking for a photo. Koichi takes the picture. When Keen asks if Koichi is Pop's boyfriend, he denies it, so Pop says he's just her servant. At a cafe, Pop finds Ichino and asks where Namimaru is. He says Namimaru and Taro are buying merchandise. Ichino invites her to sit down, but they're surprised to see Knuckle Duster already there. Meanwhile, Keen looks at her photo with Pop, but her friends don't know who Pop is. A bee buzzes by, and Keen excuses herself, saying she has to work. She heads to an alley and reveals her villainous side. She can control bees that inject people with Trigger. She sends her bees to attack civilians, turning them into rampaging villains and causing widespread panic. Namimaru gets separated from Taro. Koichi hears the chaos and wonders what's going on. Knuckle Duster notices a bee and dashes off. Pop updates Koichi, saying multiple villains appeared, but pro-heroes quickly arrive and get things under control. Meanwhile, Knuckle Duster catches and crushes a bee. He questions Namimaru about the bee's controller. Keen, feeling the loss of one of her bees, assures Taro she's fine and leads him away. Elsewhere, villains are harassing girls in the city until Knuckle Duster arrives and beats them down. Koichi observes that their tongues aren't black, so they're not on Trigger. He recalls Namimaru mentioning Knuckle Duster is hunting a bee tamer. The next day, Knuckle Duster trains Koichi in hand-to-hand combat. Koichi wonders if his mood is linked to the bee tamer case. Frustrated by his own weakness, Koichi suggests they stop, but Knuckle Duster responds with a powerful punch, sending him flying. Pop scolds Knuckle Duster, saying he always holds back just enough to not kill, but she still calls him a brute. Keen walks through the city and reports to her boss. He criticizes her for wasting Trigger on random civilians. She says the data is all that matters. Her boss explains that the drug's effect depends on the user's mental state and orders her to find someone with explosive emotions. That night, Keen encounters a homeless man, deems him perfect due to his mental instability, and injects him with Trigger. He transforms into a monstrous brute and causes an explosion. Koichi sees the destruction and rushes to evacuate civilians. Pop informs everyone that a villain appeared, triggering mass panic. Koichi rescues a man who gets cornered, but the brute comes after him. Knuckle Duster appears and kicks the brute away, but the villain quickly recovers and attacks. Knuckle Duster realizes the brute channels his power into individual body parts during attacks. He believes he can win. They fight head-on, and although Knuckle Duster gets hit several times, he patiently waits for an opening. When the brute concentrates all his power into one punch, Knuckle Duster dodges and delivers a devastating counter, knocking him out. He admits the brute was a worthy challenge. The next day, training resumes. Knuckle Duster accidentally hits Koichi in the head, so Pop tends to him. Koichi is just happy that his mentor seems to be back to normal. Later, Keen meets her boss in a restaurant and complains that Knuckle Duster is interfering. He says vigilantes are actually useful for collecting data without attracting attention. A mysterious man arrives and Keen, clearly expecting him, compliments his looks and leaves with him. A villain is running through the city as a truck speeds after him. Inside, the pro-hero Ingenium gears up in his armor and launches himself out, using his boosters to pursue the villain. He tells the villain to stop, but the villain refuses and ends up dodging Ingenium's attack, kicking him aside. Ingenium crashes into a wall, but thanks to his airbags, he walks away unharmed. Meanwhile, Koichi is practicing using his quirk and realizes that going too fast makes it hard to stop. He tries overtaking a jogger but nearly crashes when the jogger catches up. Fortunately, the man saves him just in time. He apologizes for the scare and introduces himself as Ingenium. Koichi is starstruck, revealing he's a fan. Ingenium notices that Koichi's still learning and asks how his quirk works. Koichi explains he can move in any direction, even spin, but struggles to stop because he lacks brakes and usually uses his feet, which doesn't work well at high speeds. Ingenium suggests using his quirk to counteract momentum by imagining himself accelerating backward. Koichi gives it a try and is amazed it works. Still, he feels like his quirk isn't very heroic, but Ingenium disagrees. He explains that saving people quickly in emergencies is a key part of being a hero and invites Koichi to join his agency one day, even as a support member since he doesn't have a hero license. He hands him a business card and dashes off. Later that night, Ingenium resumes his pursuit of the same villain. This time, he's removed his airbags, showing his resolve. The villain notices this but keeps running, until Ingenium catches up and states he's willing to risk his life because he trusts his team. Although he survives the crash, the villain turns into a bat to escape. His flight makes capture difficult, but just as he tries to flee, Koichi trips him, and Knuckle Duster lands a knockout punch. Ingenium finds the villain tied up and wonders who took him down. Koichi's team appears, revealing they anticipated the villain's route. Koichi introduces them as Knuckle Duster and the Crawler, but Pop distances herself from the name. The next day, Ingenium thanks Koichi and asks if he's the Crawler, but Koichi plays dumb. Ingenium accepts it and asks Koichi to pass along his thanks and requests his business card back, implying Koichi's already found his place. Koichi later invites classmates to his house for tea, but when they see it's an old building, they get creeped out and leave. The next day, word spreads, and students avoid him. Koichi reflects on how his college life isn't going as expected. Meanwhile, Knuckle Duster and Pop bicker again, and Koichi notes that things are never quiet at his place. A few months later, Pop visits Koichi's apartment and grabs a pudding from his fridge. As she eats it, she asks what he's doing. He explains he's fixing his hoodie, which is official All Might merch. Pop suggests getting a new one, but Koichi insists on keeping it. When he mentions he was saving the pudding, she retorts that his name wasn't on it. He brushes it off and accuses her of never backing down, which annoys her, but he lightens the mood by offering to buy her food next time. She insults the hoodie again, and Koichi shows her his All Might hoodie collection, noting he's only missing one, the Silver Age version from 5 years ago. He gave it away to someone special and reveals that back in middle school, he seriously wanted to be a hero. In a flashback, we see that he had registered for the hero course entrance exam, but on exam day, he saw a boy seemingly drowning in a river and rushed to save him, only to find the water was shallow and the boy wasn't really in danger. Bystanders help Koichi and the boy dry off after pulling them from the water. A woman returns Koichi's hoodie, but instead, he gives it to the boy and dashes off, hoping to still make it to the exam. Back in the present, Koichi explains that he didn't make it in time and wonders how things would have turned out if he hadn't stopped to help. He once saw a hero being interviewed who mentioned being saved as a child, and Koichi believed that the boy he saved became that hero, which made him feel it was all worth it. But Pop scolds him, calling him an idiot for throwing away his future, and suddenly storms off. Koichi's confused by her reaction. As Pop walks home, she thinks about what he said. It turns out she was actually the child he saved, and she's annoyed he mistook her for a boy. She remembers how she fell into the river after slipping on a puddle while trying to leap across. She's always remembered what Koichi did for her, and has felt guilty ever since for ruining his exam. She decides to buy him pudding and goes to his place to talk to him. But when she sees Knuckle Duster there, she changes her mind and avoids bringing up the subject. She eats pudding with Koichi, who asks if she brought any for him. She tells him that Knuckle Duster is eating his share. He notices she brought a bag and tries to look inside, but she stops him and quickly leaves, upset that Knuckle Duster ruined her moment. We learn she had brought back the hoodie Koichi gave her, and she puts it on, wondering why he's so attached to his old clothes. Elsewhere, a man named Akira is released from police custody after being caught using trigger. During questioning, he admits he doesn't know who gave it to him. That night, he returns to a back alley where a woman named Keen gives him a new batch of trigger. Akira transforms into a villain again, causing panic in the streets. Koichi sees the commotion and recognizes Akira as the same villain they fought before. He's shocked that Akira was released, and Pop explains it's because Akira wasn't yet officially labeled a villain, having only committed one offense involving his quirk. Akira notices Koichi and charges at him. Koichi runs, realizing Knuckle Duster isn't around to help this time. Pop warns nearby civilians while Koichi distracts Akira. She makes a public announcement alerting people to the situation and urges them to call the police. Akira is noticeably stronger this time, and as Koichi struggles to dodge, Keen watches from afar through one of her mechanical bees, taking notes for a report. Her colleagues ask about her work, and she says it's job-related. As Koichi begins to lose control, thinking this might be the end, a new vigilante suddenly arrives and fights Akira. He tries to cut Akira with a sword, but finds that his skin is too tough. When police sirens approach, Akira flees. Koichi thanks the stranger, who introduces himself as Stendhal, and says they'll meet again. The next day, Koichi tells Pop about his encounter with Stendhal. Then Pop gets a message from some middle schoolers saying a notorious classmate wants to meet her. Koichi is excited, thinking this person might be another vigilante. Knuckle Duster warns that it could be dangerous, but Pop brushes him off. Pop and Koichi head to a restaurant to meet the person, only to find it's the leader of a local thug group. Surprised, they react nervously. The guy asks what they think of him, and Pop bluntly calls him a terrible person. Realizing they won't listen, he walks off. Koichi is left wondering what the guy really wanted. Meanwhile, Akira is fleeing through another alley when he's attacked with throwing knives. One blade hits his eye, causing him to scream. Stendhal is the attacker, and he realizes Akira's eyes are a weak point. Knowing Akira becomes vulnerable when distracted, Stendhal keeps pressing the attack. He accuses Akira of using power without purpose, calling it criminal, and then decapitates him. Keen, observing from afar, finds Stendhal fascinating. As she watches him, we see his next target. The thug leader Koichi and Pop had just met.